Welcome, and thank you for joining us for this Future Forum, The Future of Electric Transportation. A special showcase presented by California State Dominguez Hills and powered by the Center for Competitive Workforce and E4 Mobility Alliance. My name is Shane Cullen, and I am the Event Programs Manager for the LAEDC. We have a star-studded program of presenters and panelists who will be sharing their insights with you today. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce the Senior Director of Workforce Development for the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, Jessica Koo Kim.
Thanks, Shane. LAEDC's purpose is to collectively advance opportunity and prosperity for all the residents of the greater Los Angeles region. Partnerships are essential for our mission success. For example, our partnerships through the Center for Competitive Workforce with our region's 19 community colleges is supporting bold and far-reaching strategies to most effectively and efficiently equip our workers and job seekers for success in our rapidly evolving economy, and also, just as importantly, in our post-COVID environment. Driven by our data analysis and research and leveraging technology through our Workforce and Education portal, CCW is leading regional industry engagement and developing work-based learning opportunities to strengthen the competitiveness of our region's workforce. We invite you to engage with our mission, join the LAEDC membership, and be an active part of keeping this economy vibrant, inclusive, diverse, and sustainable. I would like to thank our partner, California State University Dominguez Hills, and for having the foresight to bring these conversations to the public and serving as the Future Forum Series sponsor for its third year. CSU Dominguez Hills is a diverse, welcoming community of learners and educators collaborating to change lives and communities for the better. With academic programs, dedicated faculty mentors, supportive staff, and many campus amenities, CSU Dominguez Hills is committed to connecting its students to a high quality and transformative education while providing our communities with a vital resource for diverse talent, knowledge, skills, and leadership needed to thrive today and tomorrow. As a proud alum of CSU Dominguez Hills, it is my pleasure to introduce our presenting sponsor and partner, the 11th President of the California State University Dominguez Hills, Dr. Thomas Parham.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Shane, as well, and good morning to all of you. As president of California State University Dominguez Hills, I'm once again honored to serve as host and co-host for this LAEDC Future Forum, although in much different circumstances, I think, than ever before. In a way, though, it's appropriate that we are holding this forum in this manner today. For the telecommuting applications that had enabled us to conduct business and communicate remotely throughout this COVID-19 crisis started out as the idea and dreams of forward-thinking innovators, only to be brought to fruition through hard work and diligence that the members of this panel demonstrate in their own endeavors each and every day. So I want to start out by thanking the Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation for sponsoring this important forum and for bringing together such an exciting group of panelists. And I'm eager, I don't know about you, but I certainly am. I'm eager to hear about the innovations in transportation that they are working on to manifest and that will help drive and fly our region into the 21st century and beyond. The focus of today's forum is on transportation, which is certainly a topic of utmost importance and interest to those of us who work and live in the South Bay, as well as experience the joys and sometimes aggravations of traveling the 405 and the 110 freeways every day. Let me see a show of hands for those of us who know that space, yes? Okay. The innovators, I should say, who are joining us today are involved in creating fleets of electric trucks that will help us decrease our dependence on fossil fuels and increase the quality of air we breathe. They're also developing new forms of entertainment, motorsport championships featuring electric vehicles racing at speeds undreamed of only a few years ago. They're working on starting innovations in air transportation as well, creating electric aircraft that will help make flying not only more safe, clean and quiet, but also less costly and thus more accessible to a greater share of the population. Others are working on creating a whole new kind of transportation, on-demand urban aviation, a kind of aerial rideshare that could reshape the entire experience of commuting or simply getting across town. It is innovations like these that promise to drive the South Bay over the next few decades, and the California State University Dominguez Hills plans to work right alongside with you every step of the way. We will educate and train a highly skilled workforce required to bring these new modes of transportation to life. The university has long teamed with area leaders and visionaries, working to mold our curriculum and match the needs of our most forward-thinking companies. Our new state-of-the-art science and innovation building will be up and running when the university reopens its doors. It is a magnificent facility, allowing us to produce even better trained and workforce-ready scientists, fabricators, and thinkers. This is an exciting time in the South Bay and California State University Dominguez Hills as we grow together and help maintain the South Bay as a center for creativity, innovation, and bold experimentation. I said bold experimentation. So I'm looking forward to hearing from our panelists today to discover more about their work and to learn how California State University Dominguez Hills can bring a lasting partner going forward. In closing, as the world continues to come to terms with the COVID-19 pandemic, public institutions like your California State University Dominguez Hills are doing everything possible to ensure the health and safety of our students, faculty, and staff. Consequently, the university has set up an emergency grant fund for our students. And if you'd like to make a contribution, please visit www.csudh.edu/online giving and click on the emergency grant button. And we thank you in advance for whatever support you can provide to our most needy students. Thank you once again, LAEDC, for hosting this event. A reminder that I will now turn the virtual microphone over to Judy, their Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives, who will introduce our first featured presenter this morning. And thank you on behalf of our faculty, staff, and students. Good morning.
And thank you, Dr. Parham. And again, welcome to our combined Future Forum, Center for Competitive Workforce, and E4 Mobility Alliance meeting. Today's forum topic is an important aspect of the evolution of this industry cluster, the future of electric transportation. This forum brings together leading industry experts who will discuss modern technology and infrastructure, allowing us to promote a new generation of electric transportation to move people and goods and their talent needs to keep this industry growing in LA County. Before we introduce our featured speaker, we also want to invite you to review a recently released industry report entitled Energizing Our Ecosystem, the Electric Mobility Revolution in Southern California. It's posted on our LAEDC website. This impactful report demonstrates Southern California's unique advantages in the electric vehicle industry. This report was generously sponsored by Southern California Edison, AQMD, LA Metro, SCAG, and DWP. Thank you again to our electric vehicle report sponsors. Now, our topic this morning is the future of electric transportation. And let me introduce our first featured speaker. Alejandro Agag is a businessman, entrepreneur, and visionary, founder and chairman of Formula E, and founder and CEO of Extreme E. Alejandro has steered the ABB FIA Formula E Championship from an initial idea and a note on a napkin to become the fastest growing category in racing, and touted by many as the future of motorsport. He now has created Extreme E, whose mission is to showcase electric SUV performance in extreme conditions. Still in the driver's seat, Alejandro is showing how the excitement of sport can have a meaningful social impact, promoting cleaner air and cleaner technologies through the competitive platform of Formula E and the new platform of Extreme E. And now I turn the virtual stage over to Alejandro.
Well, thank you very much, Judy, for the kind words, and thank you for the invitation to speak to all of you today. And hello from London. And 7 years ago, when we had the idea to create an electric car race, the world was completely different to now. It's actually more years, 8 years, 2011, almost 9 years. the world was not so worried about climate change. The world was not really into electric cars. Tesla, of course, was there. But the world was completely different. The industry was completely different. And it was very difficult. But, you know, after these years, we actually, for the surprise of many, including myself, we've grown to create a championship like Formula E and another one like Extreme E, which I could tell you about, but I think we have a short video that can explain better than me in a few images what those two championships are. And I will come back to make a few comments after the video. So.
Today, we'll begin a new chapter in the history of motorsport. 10 teams and 20 drivers will be competing in the inaugural FIA Formula E Championship.
In a restaurant in Paris in 2011, we were having a dinner with Jean Todt, the president of the FIA. I remember Jean saying, I think FIA should create an electric car championship. And I said, yeah, and I'll be the promoter of that. And that was the beginning.
The lights are coming on, and for the first time, we go green in Beijing, Santiago in Hong Kong, Monaco, green in New York City.
Let's go.
Very, very quick lights out.
Formula E is the world's first fully electric single-seater series.
Oh, Daniel Abt carving through the field.
One of the biggest motorsport series in the world.
When we created Formula E, really the objective was first to change the perception about electric cars. The second objective was to make electric cars basically more suited for general adoption. Porsche and Mercedes now are going to start racing, but also Jaguar, Nissan, BMW, Audi, Mahindra are using the championship as a laboratory to improve their technology for their own electric cars that they sell to the public. Sports is an incredible way to raise awareness about climate change. That's the reason that made me go one step further and create Extreme E, which, you know, I think is the most audacious type of motorsport ever.
Electric race cars racing in extreme environments. High altitude, very cold, very hot, humid, you name it.
Bespoke racing tracks built in endangered parts of the world that will be affected by climate change or extreme weather. Why this is good? Because we'll showcase to people that those environments are changing very fast. Electric cars are part of the solution.
So maybe some of you were in one of our races. We had two races in Long Beach, so which I guess I'm not completely sure. I think it's part of LA County anyway. And we've been doing Formula E for already now 6 years. We're in season 6, and we will start Extreme E next year. But the first question is why we do that? Why we create these championships? And the answer is very short. Is to promote electric cars. The objective that we have is that one day electric cars are the only cars. And for this, there is a second thing. We need to improve the technology of electric cars. So motorsport acts as a laboratory, as a place where the manufacturers, the big car manufacturers, can come and compete and improve technology. And then that technology trickles down to the road cars they sell to their customers. That's why. How we do it? In two very different ways. The first way is Formula E. We take the cars to city centers and we do street races to show that electric cars are the solution for mobility in cities now. Electric cars and maybe flying cars, as we are going to listen to later, but in any case, electric mobility. And by the way, it's interesting the connection between every kind of mobility in the electric space, because at the end of the day, whatever we manage to improve in battery technology can be used then by any other, transportation means, being flying cars or being any other, because at the end, we're all depending on those batteries that are really the key and also the main obstacle to adoption of electric cars. But the second extreme, or the second way, and now it's called Extreme, it's our SUV electric championship. And here we get immediately a question: why you're going to take these electric SUVs to these remote places of the planet, which are perfectly fine like they are, leave them in peace? Well, it's not the case. There are places where we go, and sadly, I've been exploring the many different regions of the planet in the last year. Many places around the world are totally destroyed. The rainforest in the Amazon has many areas that are totally destroyed. The ice cap in the Arctic is receding, and areas that were completely covered with ice are now open. There are areas in the Himalayas where there used to be glaciers, and now glaciers are gone. There are beaches in Africa that are completely full of plastic pollution. So we want to take these cars there. A car actually cannot break any rocks or cannot break any sand, but the rocks can break the car or the sand can break the car. So we're going to take these cars there to showcase, to highlight what's going on in those places, and then also to try to leave a legacy. And again, to showcase that electric cars are once again part of the solution. So that's the whole philosophy behind our championships, and we use sport to bring this message of electric cars.
Thank you, Alejandro. Let me introduce our next featured speaker, a business leader who's passionate about innovation in transportation, space, and beyond. Megan Pritchard serves as General Manager for Uber Air. Previously, Megan was General Manager for Uber's West Coast ride-sharing business and also oversaw the launch of numerous scooter and bike markets. Prior to joining Uber, Megan spent 5 years as a consultant with McKinsey in Brazil and Silicon Valley, focusing on digital strategy. Megan, I turn the virtual stage over to you.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much. I'll go ahead and kick it off. I'd like to start by talking a little bit about cities. So right now, more than 1/2 of the world's 7 billion people live in cities. And by 2045, this number is expected to be 6 billion people. So just think about that. 6 billion people living in cities, some of which were constructed hundreds of years ago. And that obviously creates a huge strain on the transportation infrastructure in these cities. As you know, it creates traffic gridlock, it creates huge time delays to get anywhere. And while we're starting to see, and we're right on the tip of the iceberg of technology innovation in the transportation sector, I really think we're about to have a moment with that compared to what we've seen in other areas of our lives, like with iPhones, et cetera. And so Uber really wants to be at the forefront of that, making cities smarter, better, and more efficient. So right now, we live in a 3D world and we work in a 3D world, but our transportation grid is entirely 2D. It's completely flat. And so we need to start thinking about how to use that three-dimensional space, much like we have with skyscrapers in cities to create urban density, to create a transportation grid that's really actually serving the cities that we've built and as they've arisen today. So this was the impetus for a 2016 white paper that really kicked everything off. This is our Uber Elevate white paper. It was written by our Mark Holden, our then Chief Product Officer, and Mark Moore, a 32-year veteran of NASA, who is a leading engineer in the urban aviation space. And this really broke down the problem of what would you need to do to actually create this three-dimensional transportation network in cities, everything from what type of vehicle to what type of product would you need to what type of infrastructure. And the vision was there. You know, looking at Los Angeles, for anyone on the call, and I'm sure that's lots of you, who've ever tried to get from LAX to downtown at 5 p.m. on any day of the week, you know, it's an hour and a half. It's a terrible, terrible experience. But what if you could actually do that door to door, you know, from your gate to sitting at your meeting in downtown Los Angeles in half an hour? You know, that was the vision, and that's really where we wanted to take it. So the first pass at this was thinking, could we actually do this with helicopters? And I myself am a helicopter pilot. I really enjoy helicopters. But the answer is, for a network at scale, no, you can't just do it with helicopters. Helicopters, unfortunately, are loud. They have a single point of failure, which is that main rotor. And they're also very expensive to maintain. So the eVTOL was born. We realized that we had to completely conceptualize a new type of vehicle that was green, quiet, and safe. So eVTOL stands for Electric Vertical Takeoff and Landing. So how this vehicle operates is it takes off vertically using multiple propellers that are each powered by a different electric battery. And then it switches to vertical flight. So the propellers will transition, and then you're using those fixed wings, much like a small fixed wing aircraft. This also needs to be quiet. So in addition to providing a decreased noise profile from the electric motor, i.e. your Tesla, your Prius is much quieter than your standard car, we also have a lot of small rotors. So noise profile on a rotor is determined by the speed that the rotor is spinning and also how big it is. So when you have multiple smaller rotors that are spinning at a slower speed, you get a much, much quieter aircraft. We anticipate this to be about a quarter of the noise profile of a current helicopter today. So imagine a Prius going about 35 miles an hour, 25, 30 feet in front of you. This configuration also allows us to improve the safety of this vehicle. So right now, if you've got multiple rotors all over a vehicle and one of them goes out, the others are programmed to take over in its stead so that you can land safely. As I mentioned, these are all electric. Since that's our focus today, I'll spend a little bit more time talking here. So ultimately, powering these vehicles using electricity is actually 3.5 times more efficient than a traditional turbine engine. It also lowers the energy costs, even when compared to a hybrid electric eVTOL, by about 30%, which is fantastic, as I'll speak to later. Part of our vision here is to really make this a very affordable product. Additionally, at Uber, we're working a lot on energy storage. We actually have a division that's looking at battery development, developing test practices for propagation rate and resistance testing, in addition to developing standards and ideas and just new models around eVTOL charging infrastructure. We have several partners that are working on that as well as in-house. So when we look at the industry at Uber, we see it really having four main pieces. The first is electric aircraft. The second is connected skyports. The third is multimodal aerial ride sharing, so people actually taking this product. And the fourth is what we like to call Elevate Cloud Services. This is airspace management. At Uber, we partner on these two on the left, so electric aircraft and connected skyports, and we're really working to build in-house for multimodal aerial ride sharing and airspace management. We currently have 8 vehicle partners who are all working off our common reference model of an electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, and many of them are quite far along in the process. Our most recent partner we announced is Hyundai, and this is an example of what Hyundai's concept vehicle looks like. Another one is Joby. As you can see, lots of different OEMs here are taking different takes on this problem. We just ask that they be all electric and that they meet certain mission profiles, so being able to go about 150 miles an hour, carry 4 passengers, and have a range of about 60, 70 miles. So I often get the question, well, are these vehicles real? How far along the process is this? Well, this is Jay Merkel, and he is the director that's in charge of the division that will ultimately certify these new vehicles. And just about a few months ago, he gave us a huge vote of confidence in a press conference, saying he was very excited about what the urban air mobility industry is building. And also he indicated that 6 of these OEM manufacturers are actually quite far along in the certification process with the FAA. So what do we actually do to start getting these off the ground? What does this product look like? So we see it as a multimodal aerial ride-sharing product. What does that mean? This means we're not looking at individual aircraft that you can land in your front yard and, park at the movie theater. This is a pooled product. And so the idea here is that people will be using various different types of transportation, walking, an e-bike, public transportation, and Uber, to meet at a skyport where they'll then be pooled together in an eVTOL. The eVTOL will fly to their final destination, skyport, and then another form of transportation will take them to that final last mile. So obviously this means we need to think about skyport infrastructure as well. So this is an original rendering of what we thought skyports might look like. In the beginning, they'll probably utilize existing infrastructure such as existing heliports, parking structures, things that are underutilized today. But in the future, we are working with many real estate partners, as I mentioned, this is one of the areas we partner, to develop skyports that could handle up to 1,000 landings a day. And this obviously means having very, very advanced charging infrastructure that's able to charge a vehicle in a matter of a couple of minutes. So what do the economics of this look like? Right now, a per seat helicopter mile is about $10. And we expect that at launch, when we launch our vehicles, we will be around $5 or $6. This is comparable to, say, an Uber Black. So this is a single seat inside one of these aircrafts. Will cost you about the same as an Uber Black per mile. And we will use our pooling technology and the power of our platform and our hundreds of millions of users around the world to really increase utilization of that aircraft and use those efficiencies to and load factor to drive down the price to that's more similar of an Uber X. So this means you could potentially take a ride from, say, somewhere in Orange County to Santa Monica, which, you know, I live down in Orange County. So this is a ride that, you know, most mornings, if I were going to do it, 2.5 hours. You could take something like that. It would door to door take maybe 40 minutes. Say you live 10 minutes from a skyport and you're going 10 minutes on the other end. And it would cost about the cost of an Uber X, so maybe $50 or $60. And then ultimately, as we get to autonomous scale in manufacturing, so these vehicles become autonomous and they're mass produced, we could get this even cheaper and get it closer to the cost per mile of individual car ownership. Our first 3 launch cities we're looking to do this in are right here in Los Angeles, and then also Melbourne and Dallas-Fort Worth. So bringing it all together, what you have is a multimodal ride-sharing solution that utilizes a new type of aircraft known as an electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft in a pooled and shared way to create a very fast, very efficient, very clean transportation solution that really combats urban congestion. And so I'm now going to show you guys a video of what this could look like in Los Angeles. It was made with one of our real estate partners. It'll show basically what it looks like to go from a skyport in Santa Monica to a skyport in downtown. These are not actual locations, it's all hypothetical, but I just want to give you an idea of what this could look like in LA in the future.
And I am going to step in here a minute and thank you, Megan. I really appreciate that great overview of Uber Air. And I made a mistake in our neat and tidy system. We're going to back up a minute and we're going to go back to Formula E. And I'm going to introduce Sean Lee and Matt Jacobs. And I'm sorry I skipped over you, gentlemen. Please take it over.
No worries. Thank you, Judy. And first, we'd like to thank LAEDC for inviting us and putting on this incredible forum at this incredibly unique moment in time. I'd like to definitely note that we're honored to be working with a visionary like Alejandro. On behalf of myself and Sean and our great director, Peter Chang, we're excited to bring Formula E and Extreme E to the IMAX giant screens. And with Formula E City Center Racing, and with Extreme E, the grand vistas of extreme locales worldwide. This is really the story of humanity and the environment, and the link between the drivers, the teams, and the cars, and the technology, and how this changes the climate crisis that we have today. We welcome all of you to join us, and I'll throw that over to Sean.
So we are the IMAX team partnered with Formula E and Extreme E. I was a former LA Unified School District science and math teacher, so love working with LA County. When I first saw the Formula E, I was awed that a battery-powered electric vehicle can be used in a race at a similar level, I mean up to 200 miles per hour. as their gas-powered counterpart in Formula One. And I thought, man, isn't racing competition one of the best ways to do R&D as teams are trying to up each other and create a better battery efficiency tied with an electric vehicle? And Formula E IMAX and Extreme E IMAX was an idea to do just that, to showcase to the world how this technology can be used to not only excite and entertain people, but also to further the green technology that's better for our world anyway. So with that, we have 2 films coming up in the near future. Watch out for it. And please, if you can, come to one of these races. You will have a blast. Absolutely.
Thank you, Sean and Matt. And thank you, Megan with Uber Air, and both very interesting companies. So now we're going to move on to our section with our panelists. We have 3 additional panelists who are featured speakers, and that will be Susan Yang, Senior Vice President of Global Partnerships with Ampere, Gio Sordani, CEO and co-founder of XOS Trucks, Tyler LaFerriere, Associate Economist, Institute for Applied Economics at the LAEDC. And I'm going to let each one of these new panelists introduce themselves and the companies that they work for.
Thank you, Judy. I'm Susan Yang, and I'm the Senior VP of Global Partnerships at Ampere. Just now, Megan talked about the 6 billion people living in the cities, and so we're working on the rest, how between all the cities and the villages are the rest of the 7.8 billion people of the world for connecting them. And so recently we made a really nice video for the United Nations under the ICAO, and I'd like to share that with you here for the introduction.
Ampere was founded in 2016 with the mission to be the world's most trusted developer of practical, compelling electric aircraft, from short-haul cargo to supersonic passenger transport. And we've built our strategy to be a crawl, walk, run approach, starting with hybrid electric aircraft. Pairing those with biofuels, we can really see the benefits of a carbon-neutral technology in aviation. And we also believe in a fully electric future with no need for fuel at all, truly committing to a carbon zero air transport market. In 2019, Ampere flew the world's largest hybrid electric plane, a real first step in this path towards carbon neutrality for the aviation sector. When we're flying this summer in Hawaii, we'll actually have the electric system in the front, combustion engine in the rear, with batteries located not in the cabin, but underneath the fuselage. This will allow space for passengers. Our electric powertrain system works by taking energy from the batteries, going through our inverter, through the electric motor, all the way through the propeller system. And our technical solution, a parallel hybrid architecture, maximizes the use of this energy. We are solving aviation's biggest problems today. Our technology can reduce fuel costs by 70 to 90%, maintenance costs up to 50%. We also believe in connecting communities and providing access to travel and logistics all over the world. And we invite you to come fly with us.
Thank you, Susan. And next, Gio from XOS Trucks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gio. I'm the COO and co-founder of XOS Trucks. Thanks so much for including us and having us here. Really excited to be a part of the panel and love what I've seen so far from Ampere and Uber. XOS is a Los Angeles-based and Los Angeles headquartered electric mobility company, and we help fleets become more efficient and more sustainable on the ground. So we build electric last mile delivery trucks for fleets like UPS and Loomis, who are already using our trucks to deliver packages in Los Angeles today. So you might actually see an electric XOS UPS van delivering your packages while you're stuck at home. But in addition to, or I should say, the reason we started XOS a few years ago is because we were fleet operators that ourselves were dealing with the pains of keeping diesel trucks on the road. Diesel trucks in the fleet environment and commercial vehicles tend to be very expensive to maintain. The fuel cost is constantly fluctuating, and it makes it difficult to plan for your business, whether fuel is cheap at the moment or expensive later on. And we're also dealing with an intensifying regulatory landscape, not just in California and more progressive environments, but globally, people are waking up to the air quality and climate impacts of diesel vehicles. And so we're focused on this segment of the market, which are medium and heavier trucks that are a major contributor to pollution in our cities. But in addition to that economic rationale for electrification in the fleet side, being that we were fleet operators beforehand, my co-founder and I were also born and raised in Los Angeles, and we were also Angelinos and are Angelinos that believe in a cleaner, more efficient transportation system for the future of Los Angeles. So I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, which is kind of notorious for air quality and smog that gets trapped in the valley there, and struggled with asthma as a kid and can remember recesses canceled due to air quality. So having grown up here, this is a problem that I think is worth all of us collectively spending some time on and solving within our lifetimes. And it's an achievable solution. We like to say that the technology exists today, it's just not distributed everywhere. So electric short haul delivery vehicles are a place where we can deploy that technology and have a massive impact right away. We're focused on what we view as the low hanging fruit of electrification in the transportation system, which are predictable routes, relatively short ranges of, call it 200 miles or less, and vehicles that return to their home base at night. So they have a easy opportunity to plug in and charge. UPS is a great example of that. They do less than 100 miles on average in their fleet. They always know exactly where they're going. The routes are mapped ahead of time, and they're typically sitting at a depot for 8 to 12 hours overnight, which is a great opportunity to plug in and charge. And so fleets are making the switch, both because regulations are intensifying and they're seeing the need to become greener and more efficient, but also to save money on their total cost of ownership. This is something we heard from both Uber and Ampere, but it all comes down to the TCO for fleets. They're thinking about saving money on fuel and on maintenance and on all of the regulatory and compliance costs that come along with diesel.
Thank you, Gio. And also let me introduce Tyler, you're next.
Still muted, there we go. Thanks everyone, thanks Judy, good morning. My name is Tyler LaFerrier. I'm an associate economist with the Institute for Applied Economics at the LAEDC. And I'm sitting on the panel with you because Judy and I jointly produced a electric vehicle report, which she mentioned at the beginning of this Future Forum. And we released it in February. It's hard to believe how far we've come since then, but in February in Sacramento at Velos 2020 at the Electric Vehicle Forum that they hold there every year. And part of the impetus behind this report was to not only continue to tell the story about why electric vehicles are so important to California generally, but to Southern California as a region specifically from the standpoint of tackling our emissions goals, of tackling our constant combat against climate change, but we also wanted to tell the economic development story, both from the business perspective, but also from the workforce perspective. So really the meat of the report has to do with, in part, an asset mapping that we did of the several dozen design studios, the over a dozen headquarters for passenger vehicle manufacturers or for electric vehicle passenger company, the over a dozen bus and heavier vehicle manufacturers and heavier vehicle companies that exist in Southern California, and then across the entire state, over 24 different charging and charging infrastructure companies. But then also on the workforce side, we wanted to demonstrate first clearly a definition of what this ecosystem is. The electric vehicle ecosystem, as we've defined it, is something that transcends industries. It goes across areas as diverse as utilities, but then also manufacturing, design, as I mentioned, but then also the increasingly robust professional and consumer services element that will continue to grow as electric vehicles become a greater portion of our automobile diet and a greater portion of our transportation infrastructure. So the slide that you're looking at just demonstrates some of the findings that were in the report. So as of 2018, the latest data we had available at the time, there are over 270 electric vehicle related jobs in the state of California, of which almost 120,000 of those jobs were just in the Southern California 5-county region in 2018. And as you can see, we estimate that these jobs pay well and above both the median wages for both areas and well and above any living wage statistics. So we estimate that electric vehicles as an economic development story are a story of really good, well-paying, both middle and high-skilled jobs. And we estimate that as EVs continue to be important for a lot of our public policy goals, and as the public continues to adopt these vehicles across all classes, passenger vehicles, buses, trucks, etc., this cluster will continue to grow at a robust clip going into the next decade. 13% for California as a whole, and well over 25% for Southern California specifically. So I am here as the black sheep. I'm the economist on the panel, but I'm very happy to be with all of you, to be with my colleague Judy, and to be with these esteemed manufacturers and visionaries joining you today.
Thank you, Tyler. And now we're bringing up all of our speakers, our featured and our panelists, into one panel of 5 businesses and speakers. And we're going to go over some preset questions that were submitted prior to today, and then we'll take a few live questions as well. So I want to lob this question to Gio. Where do you see the future of your particular innovative technologies in the coming years?
That's a great question. So whenever we start talking about electric trucks, immediately people think of long-haul vehicles, and that's kind of the classic romantic American ideal of what it means to be a trucker, is this truck going all the way across the country on the highway. And we actually think that that's not, or recognize that that's not realistic today, to do, 700, 800 mile trips with a fully electric powertrain. So that's why we started out by focusing on shorter last mile delivery type applications like parcel delivery, for example. However, we are seeing massive improvements in battery technology, not only in what people like us do in terms of packaging and managing the battery management system and how we package these small battery cells, but also in the cells themselves. So the suppliers that make these cylindrical lithium-ion cells are improving the chemistry within the cells from anywhere from 3 to, call it 7% year over year. So as technology develops on both the chemistry side as well as the packaging and the overall vehicle system side, we do anticipate being able to push longer and longer ranges over time. So technology or truck applications today that might only make sense to be electric if they're 200 miles or 150 miles or less, we expect that to expand toward 400 and 500 miles over the next 5 to 10 years.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask the same question to Alejandro. Where do you see the future of your particular innovative technology in the coming years?
Well, I think the technology, it's all connected. So, the battery technology that we use in racing, it's going to be used in the trucks, it's going to be used in the VTOLs, it's going to be used in the planes. At the end of the day, it's storing energy. And what's going to be the key is really how we can take to the extreme the performance of those batteries. One important thing is how fast we can charge them. And fast charging is going to be a huge part of the equation on how quick electric cars are deployed, because if you have to go to the, call it electric fuel station, the supercharger network, whatever you want to call it, and you have to just wait 3 or 4 minutes to charge the car, it's going to make a huge difference compared to if you have to wait half an hour. And those technologies are all coming. Some of them are coming from racing, others are coming from much better cell technology, from lithium ion. There are other options to lithium ion that are in the pipeline. Let's see if they work. So that is going to create a huge jump. I'm talking a lot with car manufacturers. We have a lot of the car manufacturers in Formula E, people like Mercedes, like Audi, BMW, Jaguar, Nissan, you name it. And I'm asking them, now with COVID, are you going to slow down the electrification path? Are you going to go back to old technologies because it's cheaper and it's more simple, and you're going to kind of put this on hold? And luckily, the answer is the opposite. Everyone, because of the current crisis is changing their mind, is realizing we need to go towards a much more sustainable system of mobility, and these carbon factors are going to accelerate electrification. So I only see positives in the current situation, even if this crisis, obviously, it's a disaster.
Thank you, Alejandro.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, sorry to interrupt, Judy. I think Alejandro brings up a great point, is that this massively unfortunate economic slowdown and public health crisis has put a spotlight on the potential of what our roads or air should look like in the future when we have more electric transportation, right? So there's really interesting data, satellite images for all around the world, not just Los Angeles. There's been great images published of Los Angeles, but there are, you can see in cities across the world, the impact of taking a lot of those diesel and gas vehicles off the road and what that's doing to air quality. And we're hoping that being able to show a goalpost of, hey, here's what things could look like, will incentivize people to make that switch sooner. And we are hearing that from fleets that are understanding how much of an impact they can have.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you're right. That is a question we want to pivot to. And Megan, can I have you answer that question as well? What is the new business emphasis and priorities that you see post-COVID?
So in the urban air mobility sector, I think definitely for us, as this isn't an active business today, we still see our partners on track to deliver on our timelines that we've announced, roughly 2023, to start launching some of our cities. And so for us, I think what we'll see is really looking around use cases that could be interesting for civic and medical. So for instance, courier services for medical goods, that type of thing. So you'll see a little bit more of that. But for us, the COVID situation has not really changed the long-term planning or long-term vision here.
Okay, thank you. And as far as putting passengers in one particular vehicle, do you see your configuration internally changing, or how do you factor that in? Distancing.
So I think that's definitely something we need to configure. And given that a lot of these vehicles are still, in production and conceptual, that's something we'll consider. But I think also taking measures like sanitizing vehicles, et cetera, are other options too.
And let me ask Susan the same question as well. How do you see Ampere pivoting changes? You had talked in your presentation that you were doing both parcel delivery drop as well as getting ready to move people. Do you see your business model shifting for a while, more in line with parcel delivery dropping, or how do you see the post-COVID-19 business changes?
So our target is actually sub-regional or regional transportation, and so it's mostly cargo as well as passengers. And we have seen, well, first of all, those regional airlines are making very, very thin margins in their profits. And so especially with this COVID-19, a lot of the airlines are parking their larger airplanes. So we are seeing actually two things. One is the airlines, they're barely making it. Some of them are filing bankruptcies. And so parking those larger airplanes are going to smaller airplanes because they couldn't get the load factors in order to make those large airplanes to be efficient enough. And so there is a trend of moving towards the smaller regional jets for those larger airlines. But even for the smaller airlines, they're going bankrupt. For example, quite a few of the European regional jets airlines are filing bankruptcy, such as Flybe. And so we are a lot more efficient in terms of our electric airplanes, whether it's hybrid or fully electric. And so I think there's going to be a pivot towards these newer electric regional airplane that we offer. At the same time, there's a change of travelers' behaviors. For example, it used to be that with these larger jets, you have to go to the big hubs in order to transfer to going to smaller second-tier cities. And during this COVID period, we're seeing some of those airlines, they would have to go from point to point in order to transport some of the important medical personnel and things like that. And so there is a move towards point-to-point from the hubs to spokes model, which really is beneficial to something like smaller airplanes or the electric airplanes, which can only go for shorter ranges right now. So that's the big change that's going to happen.
Okay, thank you. And let me shift a little bit. Tyler, do you want to weigh in at all on what the electric vehicle report that was released or new projections post-COVID? Any thoughts you want to speculate on the industry?
Well, any sort of forecasting right now probably is economic malpractice from the standpoint there's just so much that we don't know in terms of how consumer and business behavior is going to change as we start to reopen a lot of our sectors and a lot of our businesses and allow people to get back to work in a semi-normal or new normal way. I do agree, however, both with Gio and with Alejandro, I think that this will probably change the game for people's acceptance and willingness to increasingly adopt electric vehicles. I mean, just the sheer number of clean air days that we've had recently in Los Angeles, and we cover this a little bit in the report. Actually, we've been failing more of our clean air standards in the last several years than in the years previously. So increasingly, we're seeing this pressure just from an environmental standpoint, let alone a global climate change standpoint, to really be motivated to adopt this technology. I would even go out on a limb and say that because COVID has, I think, changed the way we think about public transportation too, because that's usually seen as the other major key in this climate change and this pollutant reduction strategy by having people get into mass transit. I think people will be increasingly reticent to get into mass transit. So what's the solution? Increasing adoption of electric passenger vehicles, whether that's micromobility or macromobility. So I think this will probably be a net positive for people's willingness to consume electric.
Thank you. And let me just switch the conversation a little bit and pose this question to Alejandro. What are the most gains for AR, VR, and XR in the future of mobility?
AR, VR, and XR. Please translate.
Artificial reality,
Okay, virtual reality, yeah.
Virtual reality.
So what we are doing in, especially in Extreme E, I mean, already in Formula E we started, we wanted to basically to make the race almost halfway between a race and a video game. And for that, we started introducing really cool elements that help with fan engagement and that almost alter the nature of the race. So the first one we did is called Fan Boost. And basically the fans through their mobile phones can give an additional amount of energy to a specific driver during the race. But that wasn't going far enough. So we introduced this thing called Attack Mode, which is exactly like the Mario Kart game applied to racing. So the cars are racing normal, but then they can go off the racing line, and it's like if they hit the star that it's in the middle of the screen, they go through this area that we also create with virtual reality. So you see it on your screen when you're watching TV, but on the racetrack, it's not there. And they get this amount of energy, and then they go faster for 4 minutes, and the car gets has a special LEDs on it, so you can see when the car is with that extra boost of energy during the race. So with Formula E, we started experimenting a lot with those elements. With Extreme E, we're going to take it to the next level. So Extreme E, first of all, is going to have all the advertising by virtual reality. Of course, we're not going to put a banner of one of our sponsors in the Amazon rainforest. It's going to be digital. It's going to be, and we're working already on all the technology to put the whole basically banners around well, there is not a track. It's just off-road. These cars will go on the sand or on the rocks, but you will see this kind of virtual advertising around them for the sponsors. You will see obstacles. You will see where the car has to go. You will see different elements of the race. Everything will be virtual reality. So you're looking at a race where real drivers driving, but you're almost looking at the Tron movie in terms of where they're driving. So you really integrate the digital reality on top of the landscape where we're going to be racing, either in the Arctic or in the Amazon rainforest or in any other place. So that's how we bring into the sport the virtual reality. Yeah.
Thank you. I knew that was going to be an interesting answer. And let me pivot one more time with our questions before we open it to live questions. But this is really an important question now more than ever. And what is your, what's your future of workforce and talent needs, and what are you looking for in skilled workers? Alejandro, I'll ask you first.
That's a really good question, because I mean, we are in the entertainment business really, and at the same time in the technology business. So on the promotion side of it, we're looking for people who can understand where sports is going, sports and entertainment is going. And sports and entertainment is changing so quick, and people are enjoying entertainment and enjoying content in many different ways. And it's not so easy to find people that can get that. And the old style of, experts in broadcasting or experts in marketing and sending these messages is different. You need people that master social media, but social media has changed in 5 years like other industries have changed in 25 years. So you really need that kind of skill. And in technology, obviously the master here is software. So batteries and managing and improving these cars, or these race cars, is of course about the batteries and about the hardware. But that goes, and we were talking about it, about a 5 to 7% leap a year. Our racing teams need software engineers. Those are the guys that can make the progress happen faster. The software to manage the battery and the powertrain and the flow of energy and the efficiency of the powertrains, that's really where the key for success is for these teams. So I would say those two are the fields where we're looking for people.
Thank you. And Susan, what's the future of workforce at Ampere? What do you need as far as hiring and talent needs?
So the company is only 3.5 years old, as you saw earlier. So we are just a startup, an innovation company startup. So what we're doing is a lot different than, say, an established aerospace or airplane companies. And a lot of the technologies are still being developed. Our airplanes still being developed. And the way how we're developing this is through a real hands-on process. Namely, we try and we do and we fail and we learn. And so this fast iteration requires people of sort of a different mindset. Instead of going to the company, keep doing the same thing, same production all the time, like a cookie cutters type of thing, we actually really encourage innovation, the creativity. So we really need people with very diverse background. So not just say the traditional mechanical engineers or even computer science scientists, but people who have multidisciplinary sort of skills, and people know how to integrate all these into our very integrated product.
Megan?
Yep. On our end, looking across the entire value chain, you can start with the vehicle itself. A ton of aerospace engineers will be needed, and then manufacturing jobs. Many of those will end up, I think, being local here in Los Angeles. Several of our aircraft partners, such as Boeing and Overair and Hyundai, have facilities and offices here locally in Southern California. Beyond that, you will actually need a new type of pilot. So tons of pilots, pilot training centers, people to perform maintenance on these vehicles and their batteries. There's a whole other genre, battery scientists, that will be needed. And then we can take a look at the infrastructure. So beyond people to staff skyports and be providing safety and airspace management around skyports, it's also people to construct skyports and really work on the infrastructure side. So just all along the value chain here, I see a lot of new jobs being created.
Okay, thank you. Gio?
Yeah, just to add to that, I guess I would break it up into some of the engineering roles and then the trades and the skilled labor, which I think some people on the call might also be interested in. On the engineering side, if I were studying mechanical engineering, I would pay extra attention in your thermodynamics classes. A lot of people don't realize that the name of the game in battery is a lot less about mechanical and a lot more about heat and how to manage your heat. So a great battery system keeps the cells at a very even temperature all across the board. And that's really the main challenge for not only truck applications like ours, but especially in the extreme applications that Alejandro is talking about, and how to manage that heat on the charger, on the power electronics, on the battery. So that's what I would start paying a lot more attention to if I were pursuing an engineering degree. Another area on the engineering side would be systems engineering. So this is a very in-demand skill that can be difficult to hire for. Susan and Megan, you might be experiencing the same things, but people that know the controls architecture from a software perspective of vehicles are really valuable and in high demand. So CAN architecture, people that have experience with ECUs or VCUs are all very useful skills to have. And then on the electrical engineering side, if you're studying electrical engineering, I would start to focus on high voltage systems. All of the vehicles that we're talking about will probably either operate at 400 volts or 800 plus. And so that's typically a high voltage system that not every electrical engineer will have experience with if you've only been working on gas or diesel cars, for example, that are all at the 12, 24 volt range. And then on the trades, and also just because Susan mentioned it, BMS is also a kind of new and exciting field that is a bit of a dark art, and there's still a lot of mystery around how BMSs work and should work. And if you're able to, I would definitely dig into that and see if that would be an area of interest for you, because every battery needs a management system, and that's becoming more of a power electronics and software art than it is just a mechanical or kind of an old school engineering type of practice. And then on the trades and skilled labor side, going back to high voltage, technicians that are familiar with routing and wiring for high voltage systems and the associated noise and EMI issues, that would be really helpful to study and know. From a repairs perspective, we are ramping up deliveries of trucks, as are other electric vehicle companies. And there just are not enough maintenance technicians that are familiar with high voltage systems and power electronics. So all across the world, I anticipate that we're going to need tens of thousands of technicians that can work on electric vehicle systems and are familiar with batteries and can do all of that in a safe way, and also teach high voltage safety to other folks. And I know some of the local LA schools have programs that focus on electric vehicle systems and high voltage safety training, which is fantastic.
Thank you. And so I'm picking through some of the live questions, which all of you have been inadvertently addressing as we've talked about some of the former questions. But Megan, let me just ask you this. One of the questions is asking, how soon will Uber Air, what's the policy like in LA City and LA County, and how soon will Uber Air be able to execute a live plan?
Yep, absolutely. So we're targeting a 2023 launch, and we're working very closely with the City of Los Angeles. They've actually, there's now a Chief Transportation Innovation Officer for Mayor Garcetti, and within her group, she stood up a urban air mobility working group that's looking to accelerate this in the city. Slowed down a bit because of COVID, but still definitely making a lot of progress there. And so right now, it'll just be about working hand in hand with LA to get some initial tests going, and then making sure that we're heavily involving the community as we go through permitting processes on Skyport infrastructure, and that we are just working hand in hand with them, which we're already doing.
Okay, thank you. And Gio, this question is perhaps for you. With the increased demand in transportation electrification will have an impact on the electricity grid. How do you see plans to mitigate the issues related to grid reliability?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's actually part of why we've focused on what I described earlier as the low-hanging fruit of the electric vehicle landscape. Our grid is interesting because it's stressed at different times of the day, and it's not very even. Right? So when people are waking up in the morning and flipping on their electric kettles and taking showers and turning things on, we'll see a big spike in electricity usage, as well as when people come home at the end of the day. So the grid is very peaky. And so there are opportunities to charge outside of those peaks. And that's really the responsibility of companies like ours, all of the folks on the panel today, to figure out innovations that can help us manage our loads on the grid, and perhaps do things like smart charging, where you aren't necessarily charging all of the time when your vehicle's plugged in, but you might be waiting for the grid to be less stressed. So an example of this is if I am a parcel delivery operator X and I finish my route at 4 p.m. and go back to my depot and plug in my vehicle, the vehicle and the charger should have the intelligence to say, instead of charging immediately at the fastest rate possible, let's pay attention to what the grid's doing and wait for activity on the grid to slow down, so that I might actually start my charging at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. And there'll be data that shows 99.9% of the time this vehicle is going to be plugged in for 10 hours. So there's plenty of time to catch up and charge overnight when electricity is cheaper because the grid is less stressed. So it's innovations like that that will help. But I do think there will be a strain on the grid overall if things move as quickly as they need to and as we want them to. So definitely we should be encouraging increased development of not only generation of renewable assets on the grid, but also energy storage. Another way this could play out is when that same truck operator comes to their depot and plugs in the truck. If that same depot had a stationary energy storage system, a bank of batteries at their depot, the vehicle could charge from those bank of batteries rather than pull directly from the grid. So there's an opportunity to, I think electric vehicles provide a unique opportunity to make our grid more resilient and more flexible and durable by adding on some of these stationary storage assets. And trucks can also be part of that equation, right? So unlike a Nissan Leaf where you might only have, 20, 30 kilowatt hours on board, some of the trucks we're building will have 150 or 200, 250 kilowatt hours on board. So in a lot of ways, you have a rolling mobile energy storage system, a rolling power plant, if you will, that can help charge other vehicles, help send energy back to the grid in the future. So we're very hopeful for the amount of innovation and progress that there is to be had with a lot of these technologies, and don't look at stressing the grid as kind of the main or scariest problem here.
Thank you. And we are getting to the end of our meeting and our time. So what I want to close out with the 5 panelists is I want to present kind of a rapid fire question. And since this is like a rapid fire ending, I'm asking for 2 words in response to this question. What's the future of mobility as you see it? Susan? We missed that. Could you put your...
Very bright.
Very bright. Megan?
Shared and electric.
Gio?
Electric and intelligent.
Tyler?
Electric and efficient.
Alejandro?
I'm going to copy Gio, electric and intelligent.
And thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time and the encouraging words that so much needed right now, that what we're seeing in cleaner air is going to perhaps propel our electrification and what businesses in the electric vehicle market are expanding into. This cleaner air has showcased what's happening in this electric vehicle industry. And thank you so much, panelists. We really appreciate your time and being a part of our discussion. In closing, I want to thank everyone for attending, and for those of you who are part of our LAEDC E4Mobility Alliance Council, stay tuned for an invite to an electric vehicle policy workshop via Zoom in June. And one last thought, we have at LAEDC, along with partners, stood up a COVID-19 response page giving businesses resources. So if you're suffering from the impact of this pandemic, please look at our resource page, and we're compiling resources daily. But thank you again, panelists. Thank you, attendees, for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.